Loud and Quiet presents Midnight Chats.
Evening listeners, welcome to Midnight Chats. Greg here. Tonight's guest on the podcast is a biggie. I mean, this guy has a Wikipedia page just for all the awards that he's won. Ordinarily, we introduce these podcasts with a bit of background and information about our guest, but you probably already know a fair bit about Mark Ronson. The British artist, raised in the States, DJ turned songwriter and producer, whose notable work over the past 20 years has stretched right from the Black Lips through to Paul McCartney and, of course, Amy Winehouse. And you'll remember that his work as a solo artist was taken to another level in late 2014 when he released Uptown Funk. You might have heard it, a song that became so ubiquitous that it's probably one of the few tunes you've seen your nephew and your nan dance to, or maybe you've slid across a dance floor on your knees at a wedding with a tie around your head while the DJ plays it for the third time. I've seen it happen, listeners. Interesting that in the conversation you're about to hear, Mark talks about the legacy of that song, 5 years on, and how he's overcome that. I guess my general point is there's a lot to say about Mark's career, too many famous names to drop, so much history that you can obviously go out there and look up. So let's get much more up to date. Back in early March, I packed the podcast gear and went to meet Mark in a flashy building in Kensington, West London, where his record label are based. He'd just flown in from the States, was a little bit jet-lagged, and was off to a music awards ceremony that night to pick up another prize for his collection. In terms of the timing, this was about a week and a half after you may have seen him on TV winning an Oscar. That's because, along with Lady Gaga, he was part of the songwriting team for that song Shallow, which appeared on the soundtrack for the very successful movie A Star Is Born. But now his focus is shifting because Mark has a new solo album, Late Night Feelings, coming out on the 21st of June. And true to past form, the list of guests on it is impressive. You've got Miley Cyrus, Alicia Keys, Licky Lee, to name just a few of those involved. The setting for our chat was a very stark white photo studio where we pulled up a couple of chairs. And I like to think we got through quite a lot of stuff in the time that we had. There are stories about Oscars night, not wanting to discover his statue in the toilet of a nightclub like he has in the past. There's some stuff in there that people who like British indie guitar music from 2008 will appreciate. Look up the name Anthony Rossomando for footnotes on that. What else? Jumping into the window of a moving car like he does in the Nothing Breaks Like a Heart video. Why he won't sing on one of his own tracks again. His views on the most important song that he's ever written. And how clearing the dance floor with one of your own tunes is the ultimate bloody nose if you are a DJ. That sounds like it jumps all over the place, but I promise it does make sense. Final mention, this is the penultimate episode of this series of Midnight Chats, Series 7. Stuart will bring you the closing episode of the run next week on Thursday at midnight. If you are joining us here for the first time right now, welcome. There are episodes with everyone from Foles to Stella Donnelly, Viv Albertine to Sleaford Mods to get into from this run. Do subscribe to get every new one that we make. If you like what you hear, please do rate us and comment wherever you're listening. And if you're feeling extra generous, maybe even share it, but obviously no pressure. Enough from me. Let's get into the conversation. This is episode 72 of the podcast. Mark Ronson talking about late night feelings and more on Midnight Chats. Mark Ronson, welcome to Midnight Chats.
Thank you.
No disrespect to anybody else that we have on this series of the podcast, but I won't get the opportunity to say congratulations to them on winning a Golden Globe. I think it was a Critics' Choice, Grammy,
Oscar in the last few weeks. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. I mean, obviously it's all for the song Shallow. Well, I mean, we won a Grammy for Electricity as well, but I'm not trying to like flex. I was just stating the facts. But yeah, it's crazy what that song's done. And, you know, obviously it has so much to do with the movie and the goodwill to the movie and Lady Gaga's amazing performance, and the thing of her and Bradley singing the song together is pretty special. But yeah, it's crazy. It's something that I never thought would happen. So I'm very grateful.
Fascinated to know a little bit about the Oscars. What was the actual night itself like?
Well, everyone told me like, well, get ready. It's really boring though, and like all this stuff. And to be honest, it really wasn't. It was actually kind of it's so different than the music award shows because it's like in this small theater, like Grammys and stuff. Like they're in like giant arenas, and so it's like maybe like 2,000 people, and you know you're sitting around really interesting people. I happen to be sitting in front of like the set designer from The Favorite, like it was a movie I happen to love, and the sets were amazing. And you know, like we weren't in that like first 5 rows with the craziness of like the, you know, Glenn Close, Olivia Colman, Gaga, you know, like thing. But it was amazing. And then to have your name read from that envelope is just such a really surreal thing, and to get to celebrate it with Anthony and Andrew, 2 really dear friends of mine, and Gaga, of course, it was like something that might never happen again. So I definitely relish it.
In the UK, obviously news of Olivia Colman's win was really greeted with so much goodwill. Outside of The Star Is Born, which obviously you're a fan of, was The Favourite the one you were kind of, you know, going for?
I think The Favourite was like, yeah, after Star Is Born, like, you know, to taking away all personal involvement. I think The Favourite was probably my favorite, sorry to be redundant, movie of the year. I loved Vice as well. I haven't seen Beale Street and some of the other ones, but no, it was great. And it was such you could tell Olivia Colman was so visibly surprised, and she was just great. She gave such a quintessentially British speech, and it was wonderful. And yeah, and then we got to kind of meet her a bit afterwards, which was a big deal. And yeah,
we get to see the acceptance speeches and the media run afterwards and the photos of people on the red carpet. But the practicalities of the night, you went on stage, you accepted the award, like you go out into the corridors of the theatre and you do all of that stuff. But did you actually get a chance to sort of take a moment together with the people that you wrote Shallow with? So yourself, Gaga, Anthony Rossamondo, Andrew Wyatt. Yeah. Like later in the evening, was there a moment where all the cameras had gone and all of the hustle and bustle was out of the way, and you were just like, guys, I just won an Oscar?
Yeah, definitely. There would be like moments we were walking down the side thing to the Governor's Ball, which is the thing you go to immediately after, and that's where you get your statue engraved. It's so crazy because also the Grammys, like, and obviously I'm so thrilled and lucky to have won any Grammys, but they send them to you in the mail. You don't actually get anything the same night. The Oscar, they put the statue in your hand, and if you go to the Governor's Ball, you get your engraved thing, and they hook it up right there. So you're like walking around the whole rest of the night with the Oscar that says for Shallow. Like, it's so crazy. And I was just so like, yeah. And every now and then, like, even like Lady Gaga would just look and be like, "Can you believe we won a fucking Oscar?" Like, it was just, yeah. And then I went to pick up my girlfriend at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and I'm like, obviously I can't even like let go of this thing now. I'm just like standing waiting by the valet at like the Beverly Hills Hotel, because that's where she's meeting me on the way to the party. And like the people are just like, "Hey man, oh yeah, can I take a picture with you on the Oscar?" Like, it's like I wasn't even trying to flex. It's just like that first 24 hours you're just so giddy, like you just don't even want to like take it out of your hand for a second.
Whatever you do, you don't want to leave it in the glove compartment. You don't want to just,
I got in trouble one time. I had to go accept a Q award for Amy, and I think that I left it at the awards. I think I just like forgot Q awards were like in the middle of the afternoon, and it showed up for some reason, that award, in the toilet of like the Groucho Club. And of course, because of my reputation at the time, and I was like partying a little, everybody was like, "Oh man, it must have been Mark Ronson must have like gone in there to do like drugs and left it in the toilet." I totally didn't. I just left it there. And then I met this guy like 6 years later who fessed up to me that he saw it on the table at the Q Awards. I left it and he took it out, and they took it out all night with their mates, and then they actually accidentally left it while they were doing something bad in the toilet at the Groucho Club. So there was no way that I was ever going to run the risk of that this time.
Do you each get an Oscar? So everybody that was involved with the creation of that record? Because I wasn't sure whether you basically had to sort of take turns in having it, you know?
No, it's really it's cool. They give you 4, so I think it's up to 4 people. Luckily, there are only 4 songwriters on it, so nobody has to fight for that last slot.
One other piece of reaction that I really enjoyed, which wasn't after the Oscars, it was after one of the earlier ceremonies, possibly the Golden Globes, which was just a tweet from and fans of British indie will appreciate this. The Cribs put out a tweet. I think they said, Anthony Rosamondo, this guy just won 2 Golden Globes, or a Golden Globe, whatever it was, and he played trumpet on the Goodfellas. And it was just like, I really like that, because I think it was just a reminder that, you know, people, I mean, you've certainly, you know, been part of the grind to get to the point where you're winning an Oscar, but I just felt really pleased for Anthony in particular.
Of course. It was great for Anthony. I mean, Andrew's another guy that came up, like, making music. Like, we all had our success. Anthony was like in successful indie bands, and like, you know, the first time I ever saw him was playing trumpet on Deadwood, the Dirty Pretty Things at a gig, and I always loved that song. And then we became good friends. And Andrew busted his ass in bands and making music forever until his early 30s, when he broke with Mike Snow and the stuff that we did together. Everybody put in their dues. You know, I started off DJing in hip hop clubs in New York. Like it's a really cool thing. But I like that Andy got the props from like the Cribs, because it's like, I mean, Anthony, because he really put in his time in the UK indie scene.
It's a total callback to 2005 for me. I just enjoy that.
In fact, actually, I forgot, when we were always going to his house he lived in Shoreditch, and he had this loft like way before it was kind of like trendy and super gentrified, and he had a drum kit and upright piano, and it was always like the end of the night destination. The bars, pubs closed. What are we doing? All right, we're going back to Ann's. So we go back and we have these jam sessions. And at the time, I had just met Lady Gaga in 2008, maybe 9. She was singing on a track for Wale, this rapper that was signed to our label at the time. And we left the studio in London. It's 11 at night. I was like, you want to come out with my friends and me and like have a good time tonight? She was like, yeah, sure. So I take it to like some club that everyone was hanging out at the time, probably like a bunch of Claxons, Anthony. We all go back to Anthony's house, and we're having this jam session up there. And Gaga's like on the piano, and she's like a boss. She's giving orders like to Anthony. She doesn't even know who he is. She's like, hey, Pretty Brown Eyes, like speed it up a little, you know, like Jack Pignati's on the bass. Like this was like real 2008-9 moment. And then she had to go, like Just Dance was just blowing up, and she had to go to a gig in Birmingham or something. And it was like, it was 1 turned into 2, turned into 3 in the morning. And her tour manager eventually showed up in like a double wide proper tour bus on this tiny street. I don't even know how he got it down, and like rang the buzzer like 5 in the morning. It's like, is Gaga there? We're like, yeah, she's here. It's like, can you tell her we got to go to Birmingham? So like her tour bus had to come to like Great Eastern Street to pick her up to go to this gig, because she was just like having such a good time jamming with us. And that was the first time we met. And then to think, like, cut to, 8 years later, we're writing this song, and 10 years later, we're this awards thing is crazy.
The stuff we talked about, paying your dues there, do you think that's why it seemed like such an emotional moment? There was a lot of very genuine tears, particularly from Gaga, in the speech, but then afterwards when she was speaking to the media, it did feel like it was quite an overwhelming moment, possibly for all of you. Is that part of the reason why?
Yeah, it was, because like you never expect to be on that stage, and even if people tell you you got a good chance of winning or whatever that is, like you block that out, because like there can always be a upset. You never want to take anything as a given. It was an emotional moment. It was to be representing that film, to be up there with 3 people that I love and I love making music with. It was surreal.
Did you get back to work the next day? What did you do the morning after the Oscars?
I'm always like way too ambitious, and I like book like some like boxing session or some crazy shit at like 11 in the morning, and now I know after like the 4th time I've canceled it, I'm like, what am I trying to do here? So actually that day I took the day off, which was very nice. And then I think I had a meeting with King Princess I was supposed to do, and I was like, I'm sorry, do you mind if I skip it today? But then Tuesday I was back to work. So yeah.
The time that you spent together, the four of you in the room, making Shallow, the song that's done so well and been recognised by so many people, what do you recall from that day or that night? Just put us in that room with you. What was it like, and how did that song come together?
I think there was a couple nights, actually. There was at least 2 nights, and I had already introduced it to Anthony and Andrew. She knew they were my friends. I think she got a good vibe from them quickly. And you know, obviously I had been working with her on her Joanne album. So, like, we had this quick bond, and everybody, you know, Anthony and Andrew too, like, these are like talented songwriters, but these are like emotionally sensitive, vulnerable people. I mean, I think most fucking people are. And it just felt like in that room there was like this kind of slightly ghosty feeling, and we had the headphones on, and because she likes to record instead of just everyone sitting around the piano kind of singing out loud, she likes to sing into the mic and everyone has their headphones on, because the nuance of her voice and the different turns that she can take, like just doing this most subtle different thing, she has so much emotion in different kind of ways to emote in her voice. They change the way the song is, so it's really helpful to hear that voice up so close. And yeah, I remember there was just like this kind of sensitive energy, because I feel like everyone was going through some shit. I was having like my big breakup was happening, and I don't know exactly about the other guys, but I felt everything she was singing that night, and it felt powerful.
On to other things. At the end of last year, you released Nothing Breaks Like a Heart.
Yeah.
The first time I heard Nothing Breaks Like a Heart, I watched the video at the same time. And it's a great video. Hopefully people have seen it by now. It features Miley Cyrus being chased by the police through the streets of LA.
It's kind of supposed to be LA, I think. I mean, we shot it in Kiev, but I imagine it's like kind of LA. I mean, the most of the video is kind of Miley and Roman Gavras' brainchild, but I could try and answer any questions as best as possible.
There's one moment where you jump out of a moving car and into another car, and I was like, is that Mark Ronson or is that a stunt person?
I can safely say that it's me landing in the car, but I'm not doing the jumping off of. I remember I watched this video treatment and I was like, listen, like, Miley Cyrus is like one of the most charismatic pop stars in the world. Like, I'm not trying to like overdo my FaceTime in this video, but I read the treatment and I was like, kind of barely in it. I was like, well, at least can I like jump from a moving car or something? Or is there enough money left in the budget?
Was it like a throwaway comment, or were you like, that's
no,
what I've always wanted to do this?
I was like, I want to do some Fast and Furious shit. Like, I want to jump from a moving car. So at least when I have my little scene in this video, it's kind of memorable. And that's how it came about.
How have you felt broadly about the reaction to the song?
I'm super like, you know, happy because, you know, obviously, usually when I put out a new song, it doesn't sound a lot like anything else going on the radio or the charts at that time. So it's always a little bit of a gamble. But, you know, you start with a song you really believe in, and then you kind of like fortify it with all these other elements. Okay, like, let's make sure it's like dancing. And then obviously Miley is an incredible singer and one of the biggest stars in the world, so that's not going to hurt. It's great. And I guess the thing is, like, when you come out with a song that doesn't sound like anything else and has a chance to do well, that's when you really, like, that song gets really felt. Because I think the biggest songs I've ever been involved with, like Rehab or Locked Out of Heaven or Uptown Funk, like, they don't sound like anything else at the time, so they really stand out if they do get big. So I'm super fucking psyched that people have, you know, fuck with it in the way that they have, and I'm proud of it. And, you know, it's like, I guess it's got some more emotional depth. And like, usually when I'm working on other people's records, I'm like, well, that's why I do serious music, you know, working with Queens of the Stone Age or Lady Gaga, and my own records should be fun because that's what people want from me because I'm a DJ. And then with this record, because of shit going on in my personal life, and I was like confronted with stuff that, like, I really kind of had no choice but to put the emotions first, and then you got to find a way to still make it feel like a pop record, and that's a challenge, and that's a fun challenge too.
you mentioned having worked with Miley, and like the fact that she has not just an incredible voice, and her performance on that track is phenomenal, also that she's very, very charismatic. And it made me smile, like looking at some of the stuff when you came over to the UK at the end of last year in December to obviously do like the big chat shows like the Graham Norton show,
Yeah.
and do Radio 1 and stuff like that. What's it like when you go on a promo tour with somebody like Miley Cyrus? Is it like behind the scenes when you're in the car between the Graham Norton show and the Radio 1 breakfast show or whatever? Is it fun? Is it like keeping up with her, because she seems like she's got an incredible energy?
Yeah, it is really fun. In fact, I was thinking about it the whole time while she was waking up at 8 a.m. to go do whatever radio thing we were doing on TV shows. I was like, she has such a good attitude, and she was really treating this whole thing like it's her comeback single too. So she put all her energy into it. And I remember just being in some of those car rides that you're kind of like talking about, just being like, man, how lucky that this is like my riding shotgun partner for this record. Because, you know, I've done records with big people before, and nobody showed up like she has for the promo and all that kind of stuff.
In terms of putting a song together, I know that last time you and I caught up a few years ago now, it was around Uptown Special, and we talked obviously about Uptown Funk and the amount of time that it took to put that song together. Am I right in thinking that with Nothing Breaks Like a Heart, that came together relatively quickly compared to something like Uptown Funk?
It did. I mean, the fact that we had the little like skeleton of the chorus idea, and we got with Miley, and even though I had kind of chased Miley for 4 years, kind of blowing up her phone to no avail, but like had always wanted to work with her, she was like in the zone working on her new album, because she was working with Andrew Wyatt, and I knew they were in the studio. So I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna try one more time, send her something. And she did, and she wrote right back. So she came to the studio, her and Ilse, who wrote the chorus, like they wrote all the verses, and then Miley went on and sang it. And the minute she sang like the first maybe 2 lines, it was so obvious. I was like, oh man, this is going to be special. Like, it was just the way her voice and that stuff, and then the verses they wrote were so good. And we did leave the studio that day pretty much with a written song, which is not something that I'm really that used to, because, you know, other things I've done have taken so much longer. But then I guess, you know, it's always like 2% inspiration, 98% perspiration. Then once the song was written, it was like months of like tweaking the drums, you know, mixing, like all these kind of things to just like I said, really fortify the tune and make sure that like, what's the point in having this amazing song with Miley Cyrus if I haven't done enough to the track and the production to like give it a chance to pop. So I spend so much time in a room by myself, like staring at a computer screen, moving drums around, trying different shit. But like, that's my job, so I don't really mind.
How did you feel about the ubiquity of Uptown Funk in the end? Just how omnipresent that song became?
I think it's just remarkable. Like, I don't know. I can't really think about it too much, because it's so, like I said, like you make these songs and like, you do the best thing that you possibly can in the studio, and you nurture it, and you like add these elements to really give it a shot.
Have you been at any weddings where it's come on yet? Because I don't think I've been to a wedding since where Uptown Funk has not been played.
I think I've been to 1 or 2 weddings. I've been in a couple clubs, some random places where it's come on, and what I hear mostly is like my friends who have kids who are like 2 or 3, they're like, it's their favorite song, and they send me videos of them like dancing to it, and like that's.
Is that still cute, or is that got annoying?
No, that's always cute. You can't really tell, like, your friends, like, I've seen a lot of these already, sorry.
It was interesting because, again, when I spoke to you a few years ago when you were putting that album out, you were talking about how you'd love to make a track that just felt classic, that hung around, that something really endured. And you did that. So, like, that has joined this sort of upper echelon, this sort of elite bracket of songs that just seems like, yeah, it's a classic. It's a modern classic. So was that a big tick in that box, or and what drove you on to then start making more music?
It feels good, definitely. I mean, like I said, it's not something that you really have any control over, so you can't get too caught up in those things. But if it does happen, it's incredible, and it's a 1 in a million thing. And then, yeah, I would say that I followed it up by working with Lady Gaga on Joanne and Queens of the Stone Age on Villains. So like, it wasn't like I went straight into making my own record, but it was certainly daunting to, come back and start working on my record. And I, as much as I love working with Kevin Parker and Diplo, I think I used those projects in the beginning when I was working on them in like 2017 as a distraction, because I was like, okay, well, if I work with them, like it's not a solo thing. It can't be judged against Uptown Funk. Like, I think I was shying away so much because subconsciously I just like didn't want the pressure of following up that record. And then, shit's happened in life, and like I ended up with this kind of like emotional excess baggage to burn, and that started making some music, and it started to, once I had Late Night Feelings, the song with Leaky Lee, and Don't Leave Me Lonely with Yebba, it suddenly started to feel like maybe I had an album growing, and it was like it had a bit of a theme, and there was something worth doing.
Mm-hmm. Before we go a little bit deeper into Late Night Feelings, I went to a talk the other day that was about technology and music, and I kind of thought of you because I was interested to get your take on all of that stuff. It was about artificial intelligence and where that's going to be meeting with music and the product of that, where we might wear a wristband that plays us music depending on what type of emotion that we're feeling at that sort of certain time and things like that. As somebody that's always been known for creating music using not old-fashioned techniques, but loving like the analog sounds, like loving visiting those really storied studios, for example, in Memphis when you recorded down there. How do you feel about the emergence of new technology and music?
I don't mind, however, people I'll always make the music the way that I make it, and some of my favorite producers, whether it's Kevin Parker or Hudmo or whoever, they're all in Ableton, and they make stuff that I love as well. I just happen to have the tools that I have at this point, and that works for me. Technology has changed the way that we kind of like access music. Obviously, streaming's changed everything. I don't mind it. Like, that's how kids want to listen to music. That's great, and I want them to listen to my music, so I'm going to figure out how to hopefully make that happen. It's the only thing that I ever kind of doubt is when they have the thing about algorithms, like creating music and stuff like that. I'm not sure if a computer could fully kind of get the same thing out of writing a song, but maybe some songwriting is math, so it's hard to say.
In terms of the origins of Late Night Feelings, what role did Club Heartbreak play in that and putting on those events? And for those people that don't necessarily know what that was or is, tell us some more.
Well, actually, they kind of happened concurrently. So while I was working on the record and I was out writing lyrics, Rami from the XX was out there, and Caius, our friend who manages the XX as well, had he's always got good, clever, grand conceptual ideas. He was like, you guys should do a club night while you're working on this record and play your favorite kind of emotional dance music, or as my friend Rory Phillips coined it, sad bangers. And we called the night Club Heartbreak, and I came up with this idea to put a broken heart, disco ball in the shape of a broken heart, and just invited our friends, maybe 30 people, to the studio and played records. And it did inform, because the next day we came in all excited, and I was like, we should do something simple with a kick and an acoustic guitar, and Nothing Breaks came out of that. And so that album kind of informed the night and vice versa. And then we did a couple more since then, and I'm looking forward to doing some more as well.
Do you still enjoy DJing as much as you ever did?
I love it. Yeah, I still really enjoy it. And it's really nice, when you got a few new singles out, those couple records you made that you're excited to play. There was nothing worse than kind of just before Electricity came out, and I was on my third summer of playing Uptown Funk and just being oh man, I feel like a parody of myself. People just looking at the stage really, bro? You haven't made anything new since then? But yeah, now to go out and get to play Nothing Breaks and Electricity and work them into the set and make it rethink how I play it is a lot of fun.
With all of your DJ experience over the years, having started DJing in clubs over New York City in the sort of mid to late 90s, do you ever still drop a song where people leave the dance floor and you're your ego just gets bruised just a tiny bit?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it hasn't happened in a while that I cleared the whole dance floor, but I better knock on wood. I think that The only thing worse than clearing a dance floor is clearing a dance floor with one of your own songs. So like you have to be kind of careful of like playing anything that's like a little too new. I had a talk with Calvin about it too. You know, he made an amazing album, Funk Wabs, and he said like, you know, I go out and play in Vegas, and it's like hard for me to play anything except slide. I think it's crazy because I play like I play the Katy Perry Pharrell one all the time and stuff. But yeah, no, it's yeah, I guess it's every DJ's fear.
And will you take the songs from Late Night Feelings out on the road in that form? Because you didn't tour Uptown Special with a live band, because, I mean, presumably that was because there were so many people involved and maybe you wanted to do something slightly different. What do you think you might do this time?
I think it was just impossible to take out Uptown Special. I don't know if it would be any easier to do Late Night Feelings, but for Uptown Special, we did like a Glastonbury and a couple Australian festivals, and it was wonderful to even get to do that. For this album, I think Yebba and Like and King Princess are down to come do some shows. It would be fun to maybe just take out the Club Heartbreak night and then have different people perform.
When you released Uptown Special, you had Michael Chabon involved on the lyrical front, who was one of your favourite authors. And so you brought him in and he came into the studio. I remember you telling me stories of, you know, you'd be there with Kevin Parker and the rest of the musicians that helped you put that together. Michael Chabon, very much a fish out of water, would be in the corner writing lyrics as you were putting the song together. So when it came to the lyrics on this record, are they all yours and your collaborators, and why did you want to do something different again?
I guess I just wanted to make something that felt a little more personal this time. And Michael's a good friend. He's such an amazing writer, and he's my favorite author, and he also wrote brilliant lyrics. He like did exactly, or like even better than what we wanted for that record. But it's also not personal at all. I think that the music was a little bit personal, but like there's like a detached thing. And I mean, I think that like even on my other records, I love Bang Bang Bang. I love the bike song, but there's not really a lot of me in those lyrics, if at all. And then Version is, you know, couldn't be any further from it. It's a covers album. So this was really the first album where, yeah, I was like, either wrote the lyrics or co-wrote them with the singers, and because it just felt like that's what the album needed. And I don't want to get all like new agey and stuff, but you know, like going to therapy and going through some shit, like I probably like never even thought it was all right to even like voice out loud like some things that I might be feeling, like let alone actually put them in a song. So, you know, it makes sense that this is kind of the album that I've done now.
Is this by far and away the most personal, the most Mark Ronson of Mark Ronson records?
Yeah, but like nothing else really compares, because I mean I think the other ones they're Mark Ronson records obviously because like they're my chords and like, you know, my sensibility, but they've never been my personality, or never really like my emotions or what I was kind of like feeling at the time. So yeah.
Any reluctance to doing that and sharing that, or did it just feel like completely like the right to be vulnerable was the right thing to do?
It felt like the right thing to do, and to have like sparring partners like Ilse Juba and Leaky Lee and King Princess and Yebba while you're doing that is incredible, because obviously like, you know, sometimes I just had the chords. It's not like I had all the songs and lyrics, and not everybody has to be going through the exact same thing and saying it the exact same way. There's just like a shared sense of like, okay, this feels like we're all in the same ballpark.
And what about singing? Do you think you'll sing on one of your own tracks ever again?
No.
Is that because the experience of going out and performing it and having to sing was such a difficult thing to encounter?
I just don't really want to hear my own voice. So like, it's not like to be self-deprecating. It's just, it's not something that I'd listen to on a record. So I would be not that tempted to make it. And also like the songs and the voices on this record, from Leaky to Angel Olsen to Alicia Keys, like these are some of like the greatest, most powerful, wonderful, extraordinary, unique voices of a generation. Like there's nothing in them that you listen to and you go like, I could do that. Like that'd be fun. I like great voices too much. I don't think I would fuck around with it.
By the time people hear this, they'll obviously have heard the track you've done with Miley, Nothing Breaks Like a Heart, but they'll also have heard the song that you've got with Licky Lee, you just mentioned. Tell us a little bit about that song and why you're so happy and looking forward to sharing that.
Well, that was one of the first songs that really like came about, that started to point the direction of the album. And it was actually while I was working with Silk City, Diplo, and I met this songwriter, Ilse Juba, and it was at the end of the night. I think we had tried to write over a bunch of dance tracks, and like it didn't work. And she was like, "Do you want to try one more thing?" And I was like, "What I really want you to do is go home, because I want to go home." Like, but I just started playing some chords, and she came out with that verse lyric, a melody, and it was really special. I had this kind of haunting Stevie Nicks thing to it as well, but it like had a 4 on the floor drum beat. And then we were having a bit of hard time with the chorus, and she was like, "Well, I should get Leakey over," because she was working on Leakey's album at the time. And then Leakey came in and helped write the whole chorus and came up with Late Night Feelings. And yeah, it's just like, I love this song. I love her vocal performance on it. She's on like 3 or 4 songs on that album. She really is kind of like the running thread, Leakey.
Where are you spending most of your time these days? Are you in Los Angeles for the most part?
I'm mostly in Los Angeles, but I spend a lot of time in New York. I really miss New York. Most of my work is in Los Angeles, so.
In the past, you've obviously always worked on numerous projects, often dipping in and out of things at the same time. Like, what lessons has kind of doing this for 20 odd years kind of taught you? Like, do you take things a little bit slower these days? Do you have a little bit more time for yourself? I'm just interested in the day to day, like how you feel about things.
It's like I've learned to make it more manageable. I think the fact is that I'm not going out caning it every night. Like, that certainly makes a big difference. LA is really wonderful, because even though like I'm not like somebody who cares about what the weather's like, honestly, because I spend most of my time inside the studio, but like LA is great for the amount of great talented people who work there, that like if I have a song like the last song on the album, Spinning, I just had like one idea, even though the album was kind of wrapped, and I can just call Ilse up and be like, "I got one last heartbreak, you ready?" Like, there's just like so many great talented people. LA has the concentration of wealth when it comes to like writers and all that shit right now. So like, and it fluctuates. It goes from London to New York to Atlanta to LA, but right now it's kind of there, so that's why I'm there.
What do you think has been the most important song that you've ever made during your career? Not necessarily the biggest, but like maybe the one that's changed the direction of things for you. So if you were to look back over all of that, what's the most important song you've ever made?
I mean, I'd have to probably say Back to Black, because that's the first song that me and Amy did together. It's the only song we wrote together. It's the reason it started everything. My success with Amy is really the reason that I met anyone, Bruno, whatever it is, Gaga. Like, so, yeah, that would be the one.
Do your memories of Amy generally come up just when you're doing things like this, recording interviews and things like that, or day to day? Are you like, do you think about her often?
I think about her a lot. I couldn't tell you if it's like 3 days a week or 2 days a week, but of course I think about her a lot, because she was such a big influence over me musically, and it's like her presence is still like hangs over.
She'd have been a great voice on this record.
Yeah, I don't know if she would have liked this record. I can never tell. I played her 8 bars of Bang Bang Bang, and like she started to turn it down once at her house. I don't know. It's hard to read what she likes.
Midnight Chats is a Loud and Quiet podcast. Production by Emma Snook. Music courtesy of Gold Panda. Search Midnight Chats on iTunes for more episodes and to subscribe. For more information, visit loudandquiet.com.